campus, they're all in the know.
Yes, indeed. It is a Monday afternoon. It is the first Monday in June. I can't keep rhyming anymore. Betting Weekly Hardball is with you. There's Doug Kezirian. I'm Adam the Bull, and a lot to get to today. Doug, how was your weekend? We see you're back home. Your travels have ended.
Yeah, my reunion tour of both
Yeah.
high school and college. How about those? That 1-2 punch. So
Nice.
did that. Also visiting family and things along those lines. So good to be back in a home game. But in sports we have long road trips. It was my rodeo road trip, if you will, or my Grammy road trip, the extended conventional road trip. But it's obviously technology and bringing the iPads and monitors and everything. So I was able to track all the games like I usually do and set up shop in the rotating offices, if you will. But good to be back home in the friendly confines. I'm going to go pick up my dog, the French Bulldog Arthur, in a few hours and get back to my – I mean, he was a TV star at ESPN. So, get back into my normal routine. But obviously exciting just to be, a little shot in the arm, kind of recharge the batteries, if you will, on the road. But good to be back in the friendly confines.
It's funny. You talk about being able to travel and do shows on the road, and now we have so much great equipment. It's so easy to use. The picture just looks great, whatever. And I think back to like my first foray in doing sports radio, and I remember in college in the mid 90s, I was calling high school football games for my college, and we would broadcast using a like a car battery. And one of those, do you remember those old car phones in a bag? Do you remember those things?
Yeah, like the big ones. It's I'm trying to think of the right movie that had them. I'd say Pretty Woman, I think, had one.
Oh yeah, definitely.
With the firm cordless, sort of like thick, like eraser antenna.
Yeah. We've come a long way in 30 years, right? It's unbelievable.
Yeah, all right, I mean, look, I took all my equipment on the road. I had my 4K camera, my microphone.
Yeah.
People in security in the airport asking me what's going on, which is fine. That they're doing the heavy lifting here.
Yeah.
But you got to take some equipment with you. Taking the lights with me was another thing. But we're good.
And another thing that's changed drastically in the last 30 years, of course, is gambling. 30 years ago, we were probably going down to the local deli maybe to lay a bet there with somebody. And now we could just do it from our phones. We could do it from our computers. We could do it from anywhere. It's amazing. And, of course, Betting Weekly Hardball, part of the Betting Weekly family, part of Bet Rivers. And if you're laying any bets on baseball, tennis, basketball, we'll have Betting Weekly Fast Break coming up at 3 p.m. Anything, whatever sport you want to bet on, we've got you covered here at Bet Rivers. Monday, light schedule today, Doug. About 16, I believe, of the 30 teams are off. If I remember correctly. Yes, that's right. So, no. Yeah, my math's right. 7 games. So there's 14 teams playing. And let's jump right into it. The Dodgers, coming off the big weekend series with the Yankees, the repeat of the World Series from last year. And like the World Series, the Dodgers won the series. This time it was not a best of 7, but a best of 3. And the Dodgers took the first 2. The Yankees took the final game of the series. Dodgers remain at home. Meanwhile, the other New York team, the Mets, have to travel across the country. They played at home against the awful Rockies yesterday. We'll get to them and their 9-50 record later. But the Mets will have Paul Blackburn making the start, the former Oakland Athletic. Well, they were the Oakland Athletics. Has not pitched yet this year. He was injured. He missed the first 2 months of the season. So he'll make his 2025 debut. He'll be opposed by Dustin May. And right before we went on the air, you had your eye on this game, Doug. So let's get going with this.
Yeah, I think it's the game of the night, right? National television on MLB Network, barring some blackouts. And it's a late start for those on the East Coast and even Central Time Zone. But it's certainly intriguing because the Mets have arrived, right? They're here to stay. They have the right ownership. And then having played the Yankees, it's a nice high-profile matchup. Now, the Mets were at home during this stretch. So they got to fly cross country. Body clock, if you're into that. That certainly kind of rears its ugly head in college football with the conference realignment when you got Rutgers and Washington and conference opponents and some of these late tips and things like that. So it's something to think about, at least for the first game of the road trip. And Blackburn, you mentioned, he's coming off a knee injury. So it wasn't arm troubles, but still knee injury. And I like the Dodgers here. First of all, they absolutely destroy righties. They have the best OPS in all of baseball against right-handed pitching at 828. They also have the best batting average. They destroy righties. So we know that the bottom half of the lineup's nowhere near the top half of the lineup, but it's something worth mentioning. And I think, Ginger Guard's solid, right? Like he's obviously not, you know, starting the All-Star game ace
Yeah.
material, but he's still a pretty solid pitcher. And I think the edge for the lineup and the starter goes to the Dodgers. Now, Soto and Lindor, and this team's been mashing. I get it. They've won 7 of 8. You mentioned the sweep against the Rockies, but it's also the Rockies and the White Sox they just played. Now, they did take 2 of 3 from the Mets from the Dodgers at Citi Field. So it's been a nice homestand for New York. Now they're coming to LA. I think the first 3 innings, I don't do this very often, but I do like the first 3 innings because I think it really isolates the starting pitching. And if the Dodgers top of the lineup can get a few things going the first way through the lineup, I think it's they're going to get those Ohtani and Hernandez almost maybe up at the 3rd inning too, if you can get some at bats there. So it's sort of look. I mean, LeMahieu had a big game yesterday, but the bottom of the lineup the Dodgers can handle. That was obviously for the Yanks, but I'm just saying the Dodgers can handle the bottom of the lineup of the opposing team. So I just think that it's a good matchup, and the juice is much lower at 162 than it is for, say, the first 5 at 177. And then obviously you get into the bullpens, and I really think the matchup favors May against Blackburn. So I'll go first 3. Now you run the risk of push in a 2-way line, but so be it. I think it's a strong play just given all the reasons I mentioned.
Couple of notes in this game in terms of matchups. Shohei Ohtani, big shocker, he's had success against Paul Blackburn. I can't imagine there's many pitchers he has not had success against. But Shohei is 4 for 9 against Paul Blackburn with a home run and 3 doubles. Michael Conforto, the former Met, has faced Paul Blackburn 6 times. He's only 1 for 6 against him, but that one hit was a home run. On the other side, Juan Soto is 1 for 9 with no extra base hits against Dustin May, and nobody that's faced Dustin May on this Mets team, and there's 8 guys that have hit a home run against him. So most of them have not had success. Alonso has a couple of hits and 3 at bats, but not a ton of experience against Dustin May, and except for Juan Soto, who has not hit well against him. And again, like any other trend, these things don't always hold up, but it's worth noting when you're thinking about making a bet. So,
and I like the fact that the Dodgers lost yesterday, right? If they had won 2 of 3, winning the rubber match, maybe feeling a little fat and happy, fine. I just think it's a good spot. Also, we talk about situational handicapping. Now, to be fair, I think it's more pronounced in other sports where like effort and energy are easily sort of projectionable across the outcome of the game, like football and even basketball. But there is sort of, I don't think you're going to get a relaxed Dodgers team, right? They just lost 2 of 3 at Citi Field, as I mentioned, and they lost last night, albeit against a lefty in Yarbrough. So I think it's a good spot in that we talk about, and it's a term that gets thrown around. I just want to make sure people understand that it means scheduling spot. So just the way the ebb and flow of a season. And, I think you're going to get the Dodgers sort of like on point attention to detail. Now, whether that automatically wins, who knows, right? And they've obviously lost back-to-back games at times this year, like to the Mets when they were visited New York a couple weeks ago. So I just think you're not catching them fat and happy, which is sort of another check in the column.
Good point. So there you go. Dodgers first 3 innings minus 162. That's the bet from Doug. Let's go to another game involving, in this case, 2 NL West teams and 2 good teams in the National League in general. The Padres are in San Francisco for that rivalry to take on the Giants. Obviously, like the Dodger-Met game, another late game. This game will start at 9:45 Eastern. Logan Webb, who overall has been great this season, his career. Mixed results last start, did give up 3 runs in 6 innings. but he did strike out 10. The start before that was a bad one. So he's given up 9 runs, 6 earned in his last 10 innings. Had been lights out 3 starts in a row before that. He's facing a good Padres team. Expecting a bounce back from Logan Webb here?
Potentially. I'm a little gun shy with the money line where it is. That's going to give me pause. Look, we've talked about it a few times. Webb's home road splits are fantastic in favor of the home numbers, and that goes back several seasons. So it's not just this season, a few starts, right? Like we talked about with Lucas Giolito at Fenway Park recently. This is about Logan Webb being just more comfortable at home, but he's coming off back-to-back losses. Now only 3 earned, but the Royals got to him. Now that and the last outing was in Detroit. I'm inclined to think he pitches well, but it's the Padres, and you're still laying 175. So for me, it's a hard pass. It really is. I just, if it was like 130, 140, fine. And you're not. I know we have FOMO, and I know we hate ourselves when we wanted to bet something and we didn't. And he, like in a case like this, he throws BBs and looks great. I get that. And if you want to throw like alternate run line Giants -3.5 or something like plus a huge price just to protect yourself or whatever, like a couple bucks, fine. I get it. We need that peace of mind in life. It's important. But ultimately, I just don't think, and again, spot, right? Is Webb battling through some elbow trouble? Why the back-to-back games? I get that the smart thing in betting is to anticipate versus react. You can't overreact to what you last saw. It's sort of like, are they due? Is he going to get back on track? Typically, I like to be on a good pitcher off a bad outing, but I just have a little pause here. I just think the price is too rich here at 175.
If you look at Steven Kolick, by the way, the Padres starter, he got smoked his last time out, gave up 6 runs and 5 1/3. Before that, he had a solid start against Toronto, but before that, another terrible start against Seattle. His first 2 starts were great, but you got to pay attention to who he pitched against. He pitched against the Pirates and the Rockies, 5 1/3 shutout innings against the Pirates, and he pitched a 5-hit shutout with 7 Ks against Colorado. But I feel like with a pitcher you don't trust, at least I don't trust, like a Kolick, I'm going to throw out those starts against the really bad teams.
Okay.
For me, I wouldn't. You look at his overall stats, you're like, it's a mixed bag. But his only 2 really good starts were against probably the 2 worst lineups in the league, or 2 of the 3 worst lineups, maybe in Colorado and Pittsburgh. Is that unfair from your perspective to throw those out?
No. And I wanted to ask you because sometimes your stuff is just electric certain days, right? Now, maybe not a guy like Kolick, but sometimes guys just have it or they don't. That's why I always talk about with in-game wagering in the first inning or so. Listen to the broadcast. The color guy is usually a pitcher or catcher, ex-pitcher or catcher, and he usually will tell you what's going on. He'll see things and be really excited or be really skeptical. Is the margin of error that narrow that the difference in lineups is that different? Now, the reason I asked is you've been following baseball a long time, and know like 5 guys deep on every team, and you understand all this stuff because of fantasy leagues and betting and everything.
Right.
Is the margin that different facing a team like the Pirates or Rockies? Now, maybe we throw out the Rockies because that was a shutout, 5-hit shutout.
Yeah.
At Coors Field, no less.
Yeah.
Like versus the Mariners or Blue Jays lineup this year. Is the margin that different that it could be simply as he faced worse hitters and not like his stuff was that much better that day?
I think that's an individual game-by-game situation and an individual pitcher-by-pitcher situation. I think it's a fascinating question. I do think when you talk about extremes like the Rockies or even the Pirates, because their offense has, I believe, been the worst in the league this year, I think when you're that – I think there's 2 or 3, maybe 5 teams at the top that are significantly better than a lot of other lineups. And I think every year there's 1 or 2 or 3 teams on the bottom that are significantly worse than other teams. I think in this case, the Rockies and the Pirates fit into that. I think those do matter, the differences. I think most teams it doesn't. I think the difference between like the Guardians, who might be the 20th best offense, and the team that's the 8th best offense is probably insignificant in terms of throwing it away against the pitcher. But I think for the extreme teams, like if I have a pitcher who's really good and the only time he's gotten smoked is against the Dodgers, I'm going to factor that in. And if a guy who's been bad, he's only had success against the Rockies and the Pirates, even the Marlins roughed him up, I'm going to factor that in as opposed to he had a bad game against the Guardians and a good game against the Phillies. That's more of, okay, those aren't outlier things. So I would say it's definitely a factor with the extreme teams, but I don't think there's that many extreme teams. How do you see it?
And we're not in the scouting department. We're not trying to trade for him. We're just worried about like today's outing. So I think it's a fair thing to kind of dissect and break down. But yeah, I would see it that way. And again, we have the leverage in the possession of the ball, if you will. We don't have to bet these games, right? So we're trying to flush things out, and it's okay to pass on a game, like it really is. And there's no need to get involved in a game if you have this sort of reservation because of a key factor, and let things play out. I mean, honestly, in this world, like in this game, in this baseball, you can bet a half inning there's going to be no hits or no runs, right? So let's watch the game and do it. Now, I know no one wants to sit on their phone or sit at their laptop and watch a baseball game, and the whole point is getting a little action and having some fun. But I do think there is an element of just pass, like it's okay. And then if you want to get involved in the game, fine.
Absolutely. By the way, Kolek has also this year been particularly bad against lefties. Obviously, Ohtani hits lefty. Freddie Freeman hits lefty. Tommy Edman is a switch hitter who hit lefty. So obviously some of their key hitters. Something else to keep an eye on, whether or not Will Smith plays tonight. He's obviously their main catcher and probably an all-star. But he played all 3 games in the Yankee series. And you wonder if maybe they give him a day off. They give him a day off on Sunday. They didn't. So I wonder if he'll possibly sit
and
tonight.
He's a righty. So maybe a righty, we give him the day off.
Yeah. We'll see. And Dalton Rushing, their prospect backup catcher, is a left-handed batter. So it could be a good day to give him a night off potentially. All right, let's go to the next game, and it's our favorite team, Doug. It is Rockies time. I feel like we need a jingle for when we talk about the Rockies. Guys, we need to work. Our behind-the-scenes guys have enough to do, but maybe we need to create a jingle for the Rockies for their futility. 9-50. I mean, just saying that is crazy. And you asked this question. Well, why don't you throw it out? Because you asked a very fascinating question before we went on air about the Rockies.
When they're facing bad teams, like, are they that different? And I think yes. Like, even against the Orioles, okay, maybe that's a bad example because the Orioles on paper and their power rating's pretty high. But even against the White Sox, I think the Rockies are special. I do think they are. I mean, I saw a headline this weekend, and I didn't have a chance to read it, but it did make me think when I was scrolling. Are they the worst team in the history of American pro sports? Now, we've had some 0-16 NFL teams, but 16 games, like, even though it's winless, you could argue wherever the Rockies wind up, 25, 30 wins in that neighborhood, that's a worse season given the nature of baseball and given the nature of 162 games. I'm of the belief, and I think the market is finally catching up and agreeing with what we've been saying on this show for a while, is that this is a special team and you should be betting against it often. Now, the market's gotten up to $3, $3.50 against regular good teams, but here they are, Marlins of all teams, minus 210. And I did look it up, Adam. A year ago, March. Okay, so a little over a year ago, they were the Nats were minus. The Marlins were minus 210 against the Nats in Miami.
Yeah, so that was the last time.
Yeah, this year it's only been $1.35 or 40, I think.
Right, so they've not been a big favorite in a single game this year, nor should they be.
Right, they're usually an underdog, right?
Right, and so it's taken the Rockies at home to make them a significant favorite for the first time. as bad as the Rockies are, I don't. The Marlins are so bad. I don't know that I would. I can't imagine betting on the Marlins minus 210.
I mean, the Marlins are currently 23-34. Like,
Right.
are they that bad? I mean, Marquez, if I remember correctly, pitched okay in his last game.
He did against the
but
Cubs.
He's a gas can usually.
Yeah.
And Max Meyer, I mean, see that's the weird thing is like, are these guys competent? And then the Rockies are just the outlier.
Right.
So I'd honestly look at some alt lines, things like that. To your point, I can't lay 210, even if it's the Marlins and against Marquez. And
right,
this Marlins team's been pretty fairly competent. You know, they're not the White Sox lately. But you're right. It's all price specific, right? Being price sensitive is the key to being a successful sports bettor.
Yeah.
So I'm passing on this game. But the Rockies are 3-25 in their last 28 games. Of those 25 losses, 20 by at least 2 runs. But I also think those are against some good teams and not the Marlins. So it all goes into the pot as you sort of think about your export or your product, and you're saying it's a pass. I think in my eyes it's a pass, but I do think it raises interesting questions. And I know odds makers just lean on their models and their power ratings, but I think this is a unique season for Colorado for sure. And then I think this is the first time we're having to answer this question in their schedule.
You know, Max Meyer, it's funny, he got off to a good start this year. His first 5 starts through April the 21st, he had a 2.10 ERA. In fact, the 5th of those starts against the Reds, he went 6 shutout innings and struck out 14. Since then, he has made 6 starts, and he has a 6.98 ERA, and he has struck out a total of 22 batters in 29 innings after getting 14 in 6 innings to start. I don't know if something happened to him or what, but the guy had a 2 ERA his first 5 starts. He has a 7 ERA his last 6. So,
but it's the Rockies.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
I will say this. I think, we talked about spots.
Yeah.
Professional athletes, when you get to this level, they don't like losing. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and they're not pushovers. We always talk about teams in maybe the NBA that lose by 40 the next game, or even the NFL when they get crushed. Marlins know what they have with Colorado in town. They're not going to go through the motions here. Like, they want wins. Right. They're competitive dudes. You don't get to the big leagues not being a competitive guy. I think they're going to be ready to rock. Now, you're right. Like, the talent ultimately will be the arbiter of the wins and losses, but maybe an under. With Colorado's lineup is worse than their pitching. I mean, I think their lineup's like if you had to pick the worst thing about them, it's their lineup. So 8 looks enticing a little bit. 8.5. I mean, that's a lot of runs. And if Marquez can, pitch relatively well like he did the last game, you're looking at a 3-1 game in my eyes. But again, it's tough to take it under with Marquez. But to your point, we were talking about, he's had back-to-back good starts. He's been touched up against good lineups, or at least decent lineups like Arizona. But he has pitched well 3 of his last 4 starts. So, I'm close to pulling the trigger here on the under.
All right. Couple of good stats, or just I don't know if they're good, but they're just crazy. The last time the Rockies won a series was September 16th through the 18th against the Diamondbacks last year. I mean, think about that for a minute, Doug. They have not won a series since the middle of September. Not one. All you have to do is take 2 out of 3 in once. They haven't done it.
Easier said than done. They have 9 total wins.
I know. And they haven't won 3 in a row since they beat the Tigers, 1 game against the Tigers and 2 against the Cubs, September 12th, 13th, and 14th of last year. So those, I don't expect them to break either of those streaks necessarily. But if they're going to win a series, I guess the Marlins are one of the teams they have the best chance of doing it against.
Now, as a Cubs fan, I'm sure you are partial to droughts ending, but
yes,
where do you stand in sports when there are things like this? I'm of the belief, again, growing
Yeah.
up in LA, I had the Dodgers, obviously the Lakers, a million titles.
Yeah.
I like extreme craziness to be sustained. Like I never wanted
Oh, yeah.
Mickelson to win. I never wanted the Cubs or the Red Sox to win. Now I didn't cry when they did,
Yes.
and I was genuinely happy for their fan bases.
Right.
But I do like crazy things and like them see them keep going.
I 100% want the Rockies to win like 14 games, 15 games this year.
Yeah.
I know
What
that's
about a series? You don't want them to win a series.
no. I want them to lose every series the whole season. I do. I feel bad for their fans, but you know what? This might be good for the fans in the long term. Maybe the owner will get forced out or something. He's like the worst owner in baseball, or one of them, and it could maybe some way benefit them. Yeah, obviously, as a Cubs fan, I wanted their drought to end. Covering the Guardians for the last /Indians for the last 15 years, I'd love to see them end their drought. Obviously they've been a contender many times in the last 30 years, but they haven't been able to win that World Series, losing 3 times. I'd love to see the Browns win their first Super Bowl, but I don't blame people when they revel in the Browns' awfulness because it's interesting. Those extremes are interesting.
It's fun. Yeah. And I will say I soften my stance when there's reports about the economic impact of a title or something like that.
Yeah.
Like when Cleveland had the Cavs and all that. Like I do obviously want in that. And you're right. The owners, I blame them the most. I do sympathize with the fans. But again, it's not a firm stance, but I kind of like talking about the craziness of sports because when you do this every day, like we've done for so many years, it can get monotonous. So when you have a team, a player chasing history or trying to avoid history, it does make things more interesting and content a little more compelling. So I'm in the content game.
Yeah, 100%. The one thing the Rockies have not done is come anywhere close to the longest losing streak, within a season, as bad as they've been. I don't know. Let's see. They lost 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in a row. They won a game, then they lost.
Yeah, the guy on Twitter who told me, I think he's made a bet that you can bet this or something, that he said that they won't have a losing streak of 9 or more. So they've had, I believe, 2 8-game losing streaks.
Yeah.
And he's been, dangerously close to losing that. So that's kind of a fun sweat too.
Okay. He's right. They have not had longer than an 8-game losing streak, which is hard to believe. But they've actually had 4 8-game losing streaks, which is insane. Right. And they are currently in an 8-game losing streak. So he could lose that bet tonight if the.
Well, we should be betting on the Rockies then, right? This is when they show up.
The Rockies are undefeated this season, 3-0, when they've lost 8 in a row. So you're right. Maybe we should bet on the Rockies tonight. That's amazing, as they have the worst record ever at this point in the season, and they have not had a double-digit game losing streak. The record for the longest losing streak in baseball history was the Orioles to start. Well, the 1889 Louisville Colonels lost 26 in a row, but that's too long ago. I don't count that. 1961, the Phillies lost 23 in a row. 1988, yes, I believe it was to start the season. The Orioles started the season in 88 with 21 straight losses, which is incredible. Longest losing streak this century, the 2021 Orioles lost 19 in a row. The 2005 Royals also lost 19 in a row. So there you go. Those are the longest losing streaks.
They're getting a lot of coverage, at least on gambling shows.
That's right.
More so than they would if they had about 20 wins. So
absolutely,
good on them. Maybe the joke's on us. The joke's on us to generate their branding.
That's right. By the way, sign up for the newsletter at bettingweeklystudios.com for weekly betting tips and the entire newsletter, soccer previews, tennis brackets and breakdowns. And Doug, I forgot to mention earlier in the show, but let's bring it up here. I wasn't on with you Friday, but you went 3-0 on Friday's show with 2, and you hit 2 dogs. That's a nice
both in the same game. And it was a live bet, right? So, excuse me, it wasn't a live bet. It was a game that started on our air. Thank you, by the way. So it was a 2:20 Eastern start, and we talked about it for 10, 15 minutes. And the reason that made me think of it, it was similar to what we discussed on the day prior with Mackenzie Gore going for the Nats and the alt reverse run line. And I brought it up with Abbott going for the Reds at Wrigley Field, just saying like, look, if they're gonna win this game, they're gonna put up some numbers, and then he's gonna pitch great. So we did a reverse run line of plus 220, and then we did do the two-way game 5-inning money line.
Right.
And both got home. But I think it was a good exercise and just sort of thinking outside the box and alternate lines. And yes, it worked out well. And frankly, it worked out well on Thursday with a 6-run spot and extra innings by the Nats. So it had nothing to do with Mackenzie Gore, but he pitched okay and he kept him in the game.
Right.
And I believe I brought up being the road team helped the chances of that. So that's always an element of this. And I think, the third team, I did go back to old reliable. So Albert and Nguyen was on the show as well. We both faded the Rockies at Citi Field. The Mets. It was a great spot. I thought the line was like 30, 40, 50 cents too cheap. And we got there. We got there in the first 5. They lost by exactly 2 runs. So the run line got there. But, these are opportunities you should seize and flush it out. It's a very labor-intensive exercise, if you will, all this betting. And we've dissected this Rockies game, for like 10 minutes now. But there's things to extract and implement moving forward, not just on this game. But yeah, the dogs bark. So we went 2-0 on the dogs last week. Excuse me, on Friday.
A couple of weeks ago, we talked about a Twins team that had a huge winning streak. Well, there's another Midwestern team that's on a huge roll here. The Brewers, who got off to a rare slow start after they've dominated the AL Central or the NL Central for the last few years. Brewers got off to a pretty bad start this year, but they've won 7 in a row. They're now 4 games over 500. They're in Cincinnati tonight. That's a 7:10 Eastern start. Reds are 2 games under 500 at 29-31. Aaron Savale, who they acquired from the Guardians. The Rays acquired from the Guardians, and then he went to Milwaukee as a free agent. He has struggled, but hasn't pitched much this year. Brady Singer will be on the hill for Cincinnati, national TV on FS1. How you feeling about the Brewers right now? Red hot?
Yeah, they are red hot, and they certainly deserve their flowers for going into Philly and sweeping the Phils. And they're underdogs here, right? You don't see that very often. A team that's won 7 straight, slight dog. Now, you mentioned Savale going for them on the bump, and, Singer's been pretty solid lately. For me, I would have to take the Brewers or pass. I don't like to bet into hot teams. I think there's a bounce to the step. I think hitters are seeing the ball well. I think they want to get to the ballpark and get going. Now, is there a flat spot coming off a sweep of the Phillies? I think if it was a 3 or 4 game sweep or 3 or 4 game win streak, fine. But I think when they're riding 7, they're not going to be relaxed here. Yeah. I wonder that, the Brewers might just have or the Reds might just have the pitching matchup edge. Mm-hmm. I would look under 9. 9 feels high for this Reds lineup, but Brewers have been raking, so I'm a little concerned there. But Singer's a little reliable. It's a pass for me. He actually pitched well against Milwaukee earlier this season for what that's worth. But at plus 102, it's Brewers or pass for me, but it feels a little like a trap or at least a sucker bet.
Savale did pitch well his last time out, but he's a 5-inning pitcher. Like he's rarely going past 5, but he pitched well for 5 innings against the Red Sox team that is struggling as well. You're right about the Brewers. The Brewers offense was hideous for much of the season. Yeah. And during this winning streak, their offense has just caught fire. They've been
and
absolutely
their bullpen all went yesterday, right? The hold, the setup, all that. Now Saturday they won convincingly. So the bullpen, if it gets to a 1-run game or 2-run game, like it's still fresh enough that you can rely on them as a better.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah, and they did get a little lucky yesterday. There was a misplay in the outfield by what's his name? Will Weston, I think it is, from Philadelphia. It was a 2-out hit, and they pulled out was it Suarez, I think, that started for Philly. And Caleb Durbin got a 2-out double, which should have been an out. Weston, who's a young guy, he took a bad route to the ball, and then the Brewers ended up, making him taking advantage of it by that mistake. But so we'll see how that progress continues in Cincinnati. Twins and A's. Let's talk about the other side of things. The Twins have struggled since their winning streak. The A's have really been struggling. They've lost 6 in a row. They've obviously made some adjustments to the roster here lately, but if you look at the standings, I mean, the A's, who kind of felt like a feel-good story at the beginning of the season that maybe they taken a significant turn forward. They've been a disaster. 23 and 37. Only the White Sox and Orioles have a worse record in the American League. And with the Orioles playing a little better lately, they're only a game ahead of the Orioles for the second worst record. And they have a minus 110 differential. Only the Colorado Rockies is worse. They are playing bad baseball right now, the A's.
They really are. It's kind of like the old Denny Green. They are who they thought they were.
Yeah.
After a nice start, had some, beat the Dodgers as big dogs at Dodger Stadium, things like that. But Severino's going tonight, and he's actually much more competent than we kind of remember the last couple years. So that's why the price is actually doable if you like the Twins, with Joe Ryan on the bump, who's been outstanding this year.
Yeah.
So he's a guy I've gotten involved with a lot. And I think when he was pitching against the Rays recently, I went first 5 innings under with him. And I'm going to go back to the well here. I know the Athletics have some pop in their lineup, and Severino's a little shaky, but if you can give me under 4.5 at plus 107, I'm going to get involved here. So I'm on the first 5 under. I'm going to think Joe Ryan's going to baffle these Oakland batters. And then Severino, who I've always liked, has a nice kind of array of pitches. And if he's on and healthy, I think he's pretty good. So I'll go under 4.5 runs here. Go back to the well. And again, plus 107. So I'll do that here in this game. Don't want to get to the bullpens. I'll lean on each starter here, under 4.5 runs.
Joe Ryan's ERA in his last 6 starts, 1.50. In his last 6 starts, he's faced the Angels, the Red Sox, the Giants, the Brewers, the Rays, and the Guardians. None of those teams have great lineups, but none of those teams have terrible lineups. So kind of 6 middle-of-the-road lineups. He's given up 6 runs in 36 innings in his last 6 starts. He's been unbelievable. And he has, 25, 30, 40, during that time, 49 strikeouts and 6 walks. I mean, he's been unreal.
I'm just going to keep going after it. I like to find these pitchers that maybe not be household names. The market's a little stubborn, a little late to react, and I'm going to pounce. And I think Joe Ryan's been a guy. We've got there with the first 5 a few times, so I'm going to do that again here. And again, like I said, plus money, so I'm good on that.
Is Joe Ryan the most under-the-radar top pitcher in baseball?
I think he has to be, right?
Yeah.
We've had some other guys. Paddock, it was from Minnesota for a while, was going, but not like stuff like this with Ryan. No. Ryan's been electric.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to think of other pitchers who've been sort of, captured us, if you will. Obviously, Bubic has been fantastic. There was some stats just saying how rare his start's been. So I would say Bubic or Maile, I think, is another guy. But Ryan, just in those markets, man, like Bubic, I think would take the cake. But Ryan's right there.
Yeah. No doubt about it. All right, let's go to our next game on the docket. That's the Tigers and the White Sox. I asked you this question before we went on the air. I'll follow up with you here, although I think you've kind of answered it already. But the White Sox obviously were the worst team in baseball last year. They're the second worst team in baseball, at least record-wise, this year. They've got off to a better start, but they've now dropped 12 of 16. They're 7-24 against teams currently over 500. And in those 10 series that they've played against teams over 500, they are 1-9 in terms of winning the series. Should we start treating the White Sox like we treat the Rockies?
Not quite. I think the market understands the White Sox, right? Like, they are sort of a typical bad team. Like, they're playing and their power ratings are like the typical everyday worst team in the league, right? The A's, I think, have come back to earth a little bit and are like that. I think the Rockies are still the outlier. Now, this game priced, pretty hefty, all things considered, minus 230 on the road. Now, the White Sox don't have Shane Smith going. They have Cannon going, so it's a little different. I'm always reluctant to bet against the White Sox when Smith is on the bump. Instead, it's Cannon. I mean, this Tigers team, I keep waiting for them to slow down, but they've won 6 of 7. They're legit, and I like how they responded after losing 3 of 4 at home to Cleveland. They sweep the Giants, take 2 of 3 to the Royals. I think this Detroit team is pretty legit. I mean, one of the best records in baseball, if not the best. Obviously, win percentage is changing each day. I think this Detroit team is pretty legit. I mean, one of the best records in baseball, if not the best. One of the best records in baseball, if not the best. One of the best records in baseball, if not the best. I think this Detroit team is pretty legit. I mean, one of the best records in baseball, if not the best. You know, obviously win percentage is changing each day. I just don't want to lay 230 with Flaherty. I like him.
Right.
I think he's a kind of a gamer, if you will,
Yeah.
but not sort of a guy who, we've talked about Joe Ryan, but he's not one of these other dominant pitchers. He's certainly not Skubal, his teammate, but I just don't think you know what you're getting. And when you're going to lay that kind of price, I think you kind of need to know what you're getting from the starting pitching. I think we kind of do, maybe. He's going to do enough to give his team a chance to win. Now, he's pitched well lately, at least well enough, but he's capable of giving up 5 earned. And that gives me concern when I'm trying to think about laying 230. But I also don't want the dog here. I don't want any part of the White Sox.
Here is the difference why I agree with you that the White Sox should not be treated like the Rockies. The biggest difference between these two teams, it's not the lineup. The Rockies is worse, but not by much. The White Sox lineup stinks. Both teams have terrible bullpens. The Rockies might even have a hair better of a bullpen. Like they might be 28th and the White Sox might be 29th. The biggest difference, though, why the White Sox, I won't treat them like the Rockies, is their starting pitching overall has been significantly better. The Rockies haven't had really anybody that's pitched well. Jonathan Cannon, who's pitching tonight, has a 4.15 ERA in 60 innings. I mean, it's not amazing, but it's not bad. You talked about Shane Smith. Sean Burke has pitched well for them. Veteran journeyman Davis Martin has a 3.67 ERA. So more often than not, Adrian Hauser, who's made 3 starts here lately, another journeyman, has pitched well. More often than not, the White Sox are getting a quality start. What's happening is their bullpen is so bad that they're staying in these games through 5 innings, and then they're getting decked in the final 4 of these games. I would like to know, I should look up before tomorrow, the White Sox run differential from the 6th inning on. It's got to be hideous.
Yeah, because you mentioned that their starting pitching's been solid, right?
Yeah.
So It's got to be the bullpen. And I know a really sharp guy who just waits till these teams have a lead and then bets against them in game.
Smart.
Like if the Rockies have an early lead or the White Sox.
Yes.
It's really, smart to do, all things considered. And, just something to keep in the back of your mind if you're watching. Now, you don't want to just throw good money after bad, but there are things that you can sort of pounce on and take advantage of these bad teams, not just, run line against them, blah, blah, blah.
By the way, the White Sox do not have a single player with more than 1 save. Think about that for a minute. They have 6 guys who have 1 save, and that's it. The Rockies have a player with 3 saves in Zach Agnos, who I'm sure 99% of baseball fans never heard of the guy, but he has 3 saves. But that's crazy. It is what it is.
It is what it is. I mean, look, we're a third of the way through the season.
Yeah.
Some stuff will change and regress either direction, but sometimes you do have these special seasons. You want to pounce, and I've been saying it for several weeks now, right? We should have been pouncing. We have been pouncing against the Rockies. I know I've racked up a lot of units on this very show, and that's where the market can be stale and stubborn, and I think that's where the opportunities exist.
Well, Doug, you're not only talking about baseball, you're also talking some hoop. Betting Weekly Fast Break is coming the folks' way in about 17 minutes. There are no games in the NBA tonight with the NBA Finals starting on Thursday. There are 3 games in the WNBA tonight. What's going on Betting Weekly Fast Break?
Yeah, we're going to obviously do a little bit of an autopsy on how the Pacers got here, right? They were in the neighborhood of 25-1. So, the question is, what did they do? Why didn't we see this coming? And I think it's a new NBA too, with the new sort of second apron, things like that of the financial. I think we're going to see more trades this offseason and teams unable to hang on to their super team, so to speak. But moving forward, we have the NBA Finals obviously starts Thursday. We're going to look into some series props. Just according to Bet Rivers, Anthony Edwards just recorded the most rebounds in the Western Conference Finals. He was 40-1 to do that going into the series. So we're going to talk about potential long shots that could hit. We have pro bettor Chris Massera, who's been on this show and also the NBA show. So we're going to dissect all that, look into some WNBA, maybe futures, as it's dark day in the WNBA actually today. They don't do a lot of Monday slates. But
Right.
we're going to look into some game because there's going to be some line movement between now and Thursday. So we're going to look into some series prices, series odds. I mentioned the props, but even game one odds as well.
Only one game we didn't mention in baseball, by the way. That's the Angels and Red Sox, 7:10 Eastern. Tyler Anderson and Richard Fitz. All right, folks. Thanks for joining us today. We appreciate it. You know what? We can't go yet. I got to read the comments from the YouTube chat before we go here, Doug. Steve from Lynn said, "Hey, Adam. Hey, Doug. Hope all is well. Slow betting days." He says he still heads down to the North End to place his bets. Hey.
Each their own.
All right, do that. But if you want to do it the right way, come here to Bet Rivers. Daryl, your opinions on taking the Red Sox at home with the over versus the Angels and taking the Dodgers at home with the over against the Mets?
So I guess you're implying that they are correlated. They can be.
Yeah.
But if Gingergaard throws a great game, then you're kind of, up against it. And same with the Angels. I'm always a little cautious with those direct correlations. It always sounds better than it ends up being, as a way I would classify it.
That's funny. I love the nickname you have for Dustin May there. Also from Daryl, he says he leans the Giants and he wants to know what your thoughts are on the Twins over the A's as well.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's Joe Ryan. You got to back him. I would go to the well. I'd just be a little reluctant. I think Severino's been solid, and I think there's better ways to do that. Like I said, the first 5 under, because I am expecting a big performance from Joe Ryan, and I do want to officially add the first 5 under in that Miami-Colorado game. I was toying with it. The market's come down actually from 8.5 to 8. I'll go with the first 5 under 4.5 runs there, hoping Marquez can continue what he's been doing lately against this Miami, and as he faces this Miami lineup. But under 4.5 is minus 125, so minus a quarter. So I'll add that. So 3 plays on my end total.
Last thing, Alex, who's one of our producers, says 4th of July will feature the White Sox at the Rockies. No better way to celebrate America. Yeah. Here's the question on that, Doug, though. Will the White Sox on the road be favored in that game?
Yes.
What if you had to predict without knowing the pitching matchups, first game of that series? If you had to guess, White Sox are what?
I think like $150, 60. I mean, it all depends on the pitching, but the White Sox if they have Shane Smith on the bump, it'd be like minus $160.
That's amazing. I'm guessing the White Sox have not been favored on the road in the 2 years, probably. I don't, maybe the first week of last season before we knew how bad they'd be. I guess it's possible.
Right. I would say, there are fireworks, but we've all seen fireworks that just don't go off, right? They're duds, whatever you want to call it. That's what this game is on July 4th.
All right, great stuff. Thanks to Alex and thanks to Chris for producing today. Great job, Doug, as always. We'll talk to you all tomorrow at 2 p.m. Where else but right here, 2 p.m. Eastern. Betting Weekly Hardball. Betting Weekly Fast Break coming your way in about 12 minutes. We'll see you, everybody.